Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to Punk Day. No, wait, this is not Punk Daily. This is
No Punk News.
Wrestling News Brief. But, I don't know, CMB did have some stuff on his Instagram story. He had some stills from a Fantastic Four comic book.
This has to do with Dax doing the trademark for CMFTR.
Oh, that could be. Is this confirmation that he blocked Dax's number? All right, Punk Daily tonight. Anyways, no, what we're here to talk about, Larson, is WWE Creative. They're on a hot streak right now, and there could be a reason for that.
Yes, earlier today, Mike Johnson, the PW Insider, reported that there was talk backstage within WWE that Vince McMahon wasn't really involved in WWE Creative any longer. So, before we get to the rest of this, let's do a brief recap. So, by and large, save for the Raw after Mania, seems like Vince, he get the scripts from Creative. This is the purple pen, I know, but he get out his red pen.
The red pen.
Make his edits, send it back in, shortly before the show, seemingly, and they would be implemented. Anyways, back to PW Insider. That general sentiment that Vince is no longer involved among talents, WWE employees. So it is now that Triple H has been knighted by Endeavor to handle the creative load and that the game would be behind, quote, 99.9% of what happens creatively. Future.
He's been
maybe
knighted.
even now.
Knighted.
Sir Triple H.
Sir H. Sir Game. Yeah. Well, anyways.
It should be Sir Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
Well, yeah, that sounds a lot more regal. Fightful Select followed up on that report and confirmed that that was the predominant belief within WWE and that there was a boost in morale because of it. One higher up within WWE told Fightful, quote, I think you could look at the show. Johnny Gargano is back after his return was nixed. Tegan Knox is on the show. Dragon Lee's all over the program. Carlito's finally factored in after being under contract for months. Cameron Grimes got back on TV. Bronson Reed is winning matches. Tag team titles and Intercontinental Championship titles are getting long matches to end Raw. I'm not going to say that all those are a direct result of the situation, but all of those parts moving at the same time is a little too much to be a coincidence for me, end quote. Both PW Insider and Fightful note that no change in creative leadership within WWE has been confirmed either publicly or internally. But, Larson, I've been saying this for a while. You know, there are the fact that, Gunther is the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion for, now. And Gargano's back. I mean, everything this guy said, it's like one of the major sea changes with WWE's product has been the character development, which when Vince was running day to day was non-existent. And
not his forte, no.
No, you see a lot of that, and you see a lot of pieces of plot be put into place, if I may be alliterative there for a moment. And none of that, to me, ever said Vince McMahon was in charge. Now, there have been certain changes that sort of seem to make sense from a promoter standpoint that I thought might have been Vince. For example, that one week they postponed Bayley's match a week for it to happen in the UK when they went to the UK for whatever they went there for. That to me was like, oh, maybe that was Vince stepping in because he knew, well, from a promotion standpoint, Bayley always gets a killer reaction in the UK. And that seemed like, hey, that's kind of a good idea. I always felt like this unholy alliance of Triple H doing most of the stuff and then Vince coming in with his, where's your purple pen, your red pen? There you go.
This one's purple. His would,
yeah, it's Judgment Day pen. He makes changes. It just made sense that, Triple H is doing most of the stuff because a lot of the stuff that just was, prevalent during the Vince days weren't around anymore.
Well, guess what? Apparently now Vince might be doing 0.1% of the stuff.
Yeah, so what would that mean?
Basically nothing. That's what it would mean. Essentially and effectively nothing.
Statistically nothing.
Statistically, basically nothing. It's interesting if the idea is that Endeavor during the merger, the acquisition that would be, seemingly publicly, Ari Emanuel, the head guy there at Endeavor, was insistent in having Vince be a part of the deal. Like Vince's participation was necessary for the deal to happen. And he's chairman of the board for this new company, TKO Holdings. But if there's truth to this, that Endeavor is like, we want Triple H to be the creative guy, not you, Vince, Triple H. I mean, I would imagine Vince might be involved in some aspects of the business dealings of it because he is chairman of the board, but at least in terms of the day-to-day operations of WWE, I mean, again, from the creative side, there's seemingly no involvement, which is, and you're right about for the most part, the whatever kind of partnership, loose or otherwise, that Vince and Triple H had with the stories and creatives seemed to be working because Triple H was doing probably 85% of the work, and then Vince would just come in and make some notes, and those notes would be implemented. And you brought up the Bailey example, and that was the right call. There's been a couple other instances where we've heard of Vince making changes, and in hindsight, you're like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, right.
They're sensible changes.
Yeah,
he hasn't been like, for the most part, save for Raw after Mania, that we've heard of, taking up scripts, tearing them up, and rewriting them wholesale shortly before the show, like he would do on a regular basis when he was in the building for Raws and SmackDowns.
Yeah.
But to know that potentially what we're going to see now and going forward is probably, if there's this sentiment backstage is an accurate reflection of what's happening within the company, what we're going to see going forward is more or less Triple H's unfiltered vision for what he wants the product to be. And that's something we've all been kind of wanting ever since he stepped in to take over creative after Vince left initially. And I'm curious to see what we're going to see. I don't think it's going to be a massive change from what we see now. But, we just got at a Fastlane, a show where there wasn't the huge story beats that we're used to. But we've seen prior pay-per-views, premium live events happen, where, there wasn't those major story beats, but there's been building blocks put in place to lead to those major story beats down the line. One thing that's been a hallmark of Triple H's creative of late is deliberate pacing. Takes his time. Doesn't rush things for the most part.
Yeah.
Granted, there might be things that circumstances that come up that will force him to, change a direction or something. But he doesn't really seem to be in any hurry to pay off storylines too soon.
Yeah, right.
And that's something we see with LA Knight. People wanted to win Money in the Bank. Didn't happen. People wanted to see him win the U.S. title at SummerSlam. Didn't happen. He just got done with a tag match with arguably the greatest superstar in WWE history, in John Cena.
Yeah.
It's obvious they really like LA Knight and they have high hopes for him. Mm-hmm. And he's in the midst of a major push.
Yeah. Right.
But they took their time.
Yeah. And it is, we talked about this a little bit earlier on the show today. We talk about how AEW creatively is in a bit of cold, attendance wise is in sort of a cold spot. And we reflected on the creative aspect of it and why that might be one of the issues. Well, we talked about how you can make an analogy to TV shows. Well, I'm sorry, you can make sort of the opposite of an analogy for TV shows, how like TV shows operate in a very specific way. Wrestling programs, operate in an entirely different way from pretty much anything else. And Triple H understands how to do that. To further this analogy here, using TV shows, you don't introduce a character on a TV show and not build them up and you don't put them like where they're going to be in the end immediately. And when you think you have something with hot with LA Knight, you don't immediately shoot him to the top, because that's just, where's the journey? Where are you're going to have a much bigger payoff if you do what they're doing right now with them. You flesh him out. You challenge him to deliver promos with more substance. You give the guy a story, or you take his story, one of 20 plus years in the industry grinding, and something that everybody can relate to or understand, and you make that sort of like the center of who he is, and then expand outwards with what clearly is a person who already understands so many other aspects of what a successful pro wrestler is. And so you make his path the story, something that people want to, tune in to see, as opposed to just, oh, he's popular right now, slap that title on him. No, give us the story. He does legitimately seem interested in telling stories. We've talked about this endlessly lately, especially. He is setting a lot of things up. Like even the slightest hint of frustration on Santos Escobar's face after losing that U.S. title match against Rey Mysterio. And before he can act on it, he gets attacked by the Street Profits. So there's a kernel of something in the mid card that can be paid off who knows when.
Yeah. Yep.
And so that's happening all over the place. He's setting all these things up. And how's the Cody thing going to pay off? So these are all things that Vince really had not been doing for years. And we had got that kind of an NXT at NXT's peak. Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing it with Triple H in charge. And honestly, like, it seemed kind of obvious, especially once you see a lot of these stars that, you know, we knew Vince really wasn't huge on. Well, Triple H was the releases. Take the releases, for example. Now, we didn't see guys like Bronson Reed, Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, Tegan Nox get released, even though we hadn't seen a lot of them lately. There were people that were released that we had not seen a lot of, but none of them screamed to me Triple H guys. In fact, one huge Vince guy, and this to me was proof positive of what we're talking about right now. Mm-hmm. As much as I loved Boogs, and I thought that guy had something to offer, clearly, historically, was never a Triple H guy. Never.
Seemed like it. Nope.
As soon as Triple H took over, he was kind of, and I know he was injured during that time, but he was out of the picture. And they tried to sort of fit him back in, and it never really worked. But you could tell there really wasn't much of an effort to fit him back in. And he even said it after he was released. When Vince lost control, I was done. He was a Vince guy. Now you think, oh, if Vince is so in control, if Vince is the guy, wouldn't his guys be back? Wouldn't a mandate be, I want this guy pushed, so do it? Because that's a Vince thing. Mm-hmm. No, didn't happen. So you have to ask yourself, and this is something we'll never know, was part of Vince's return to WWE and subsequent sale of the company to Endeavor, or merge with whatever it is.
Yeah.
Was his return him getting to sit next to Ari Emanuel on the CNBC show or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Was part of that. Okay, you're going to be this is to solidify your legacy, because your legacy's in the toilet. You came back, you got the company, the deal done. You get to be chairman of the board or whatever his current title is. But your guy Triple H knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. Look at the business. Look at what Nick Khan and Triple H have done. Look at attendance. Look at ratings. All that's up. Mm-hmm. And all that we understand is because of Triple H and Nick Khan. Now you can claim we want your name. We want the name Vince McMahon to appease shareholders. But we know who's doing the work here, and that's who we're going to use. Do you want to do the deal? Yeah. I wonder if that conversation was had.
That could be. And whether, if that were the case, and seemingly, whether it's a situation where Vince was content to more or less be a figurehead for WWE, or maybe he's like, okay, I'll take this, and maybe he'll try to find a way to maneuver back in. Who knows? Mm-hmm. Who knows what goes on in Vince's head? You know? And you're right, we'll never know for sure. Maybe in 20, 30 years, maybe after Vince has passed away, maybe someone will be like, all right, I'll finally write a book about some of this.
A Nick Khan book would be fascinating.
That would be fascinating. I don't think Triple H would ever spill any of the details about any of this stuff, but who knows?
But it would also be interesting. I mean, look, the bottom line is, too, Triple H he's Vince's protege. You can still run a victory lap with Triple H in charge because, I taught everything this guy. And by the way, Triple H ain't reinventing the wheel. He's just freshening up what Vince has already done. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no big changes in presentation. They're not. They still have the, cameras in a room where there shouldn't have been a camera in there with Paul Heyman and Rhea Ripley plotting. That doesn't make any sense, but it's a Vince thing, and Triple H is keeping that. So he understands the language that Vince invented for televised pro wrestling, and he's just a fresh mind who's interested in building characters because he knows from the Attitude Era when he came up, that's what sells. Characters.
Yeah. Characters, yep.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, yeah, it interesting, not terribly surprising because you see it on the screen, but also interesting to understand that there is a real morale boost result from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is good to hear because for so long when Vince was around, you'd hear reports of morale being just in the toilet. Mm-hmm. So, you want people to show up to go to work and like be happy that they're going to a place like WWE now as opposed to how it used to be where everybody just seems so miserable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we'll see what happens when if old Phil comes back, if these Fantastic Four comic book panels are to be believed.
Return is nigh, huh?
I mean, he's a comic book fan. I don't know what you guys want from that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Not everything means something, people.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Sometimes he's just reading Fantastic Four.
That could be, yeah. And then I think there was also a picture of like Bela Lugosi or somebody with like
it was Vincent Price.
That's right. It was Vincent Price.
Mustache.
With the Vince mustache. Yeah. So, I don't know. Maybe he met with Vince. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he just likes Vincent Price. Who doesn't like Vincent Price? Time for Vincent Price Daily.
There we go.
Yeah. Anyways.
Be all gothic and here and stuff,
Yeah. Anyways, also on the podcast today, which you can check out right now, we talked about AEW Collision and the new tag titles around the waist of Ricky Starks and Big Bill Big, and what it could possibly mean for FTR and their future in AEW. Yes. And we also looked at the SmackDown episode that aired on Friday before Fastlane, which, surprisingly just turned out to be all about, maybe that'll be a Triple H thing. Instead of like, we're just going to sell the people on the pay-per-view. We're actually going to do some stuff.
Tell stories leading into the pay-per-view.
The story never ends.
That's what he said. That's a direct quote.
I'm happy for Edge, but, the machine keeps going. Never ends again, total grind. Anyways, that's going to do it for the show today. Go check out the podcast from earlier today. Till next time, we'll see you around.
Goodbye.